So, welcome to the Tech Hour, and the title is Rich DVI Files and Accessible PDF. And the title is, well, let me say that after I sent out the announcement, I had a rather brilliant piece of news in response, which was that Jonathan Godfrey, who's a lecturer in statistics in Auckland, New Zealand, and who is also blind, so he's an expert in lots of things, has sent a reply giving his thoughts. And he's coming from a very useful point of view, which is the point of view of the users of accessible PDF. So I'd like to, I have his permission, I'd like to read out some of his responses after I've given the introduction, when I think it's appropriate to do so. So I'm in part representing Jonathan Godfrey. So, though I expect all of you know this, some people listening may not know that in 1980s, when TeX was developed, PDF didn't exist. In fact, PostScript didn't exist. And getting printed output was something of a perilous process, or at least a process that required special activity and special work. And you had to write drivers for all manner of devices, and PDF allowed you to write a driver for one device, which is the PDF printer. Now, Don Knuth knew the present state of the art and knew that the state of the art would change. And he designed the DVI format to record all the typesetting decisions. In other words, what goes where on the page. And interestingly, it doesn't have any glyph information in it at all, except the names of the fonts. And it assumes that from the names of the fonts, you can determine the dimensions of the fonts. So when TeX typesets a document, it doesn't even know what a letter A looks like. It just knows the dimensions of a letter A and so forth. And that's what the DVI file is, which stands for device independent, which also means device agnostic. And he provided a capability called specials where you could add information to the DVI file. And fairly early on, people would add information that would be read by the particular printer driver you had. So if your printer driver was to PostScript, you could say, at this point, insert this piece of PostScript into the output. Don't worry about what it does, just insert it. And earlier on in the process, the typesetting system determines, effectively inputs a graphic. And for TeX to input the graphic, it needs to read the bounding box information and decide how much size to allocate for that, and to, so to speak, pass the instructions through to the PostScript. So that's the way in which DVI works. So if you imagine a page where every character has been replaced by a little box, a little rectangle, and you know the font of the rectangle, and every image has been replaced by a file name and so forth, that's what a DVI file sort of looks like. Now, an accessible PDF is something that can be, amongst other things, screen read successfully. Now, don't take this the wrong way, but one of the important things that typesetting does is it breaks things. In fact, that's the main function, one of the main functions of typesetting, is to break things. And Don Knuth has two paragraphs in the TeX book. The one is breaking paragraphs into lines, and the other is breaking lines into pages. So we break things so that they fit on the piece of paper. And that's not the only thing that typesetting breaks. It breaks a footnote or an endnote from the point at which it's referenced. And it breaks a figure from the point at which it's needed. It may be floated, it may be a whole page figure, in which case it can't appear on the same page as the text. And when I was typesetting for the Open University, we had physics books, and it was very important that on the 2-page spread, you had the figure and the text, even if they weren't both on the same page, they should be on the same spread. And so the basic unit of typesetting for a bound book is not the page, but the spread. And there's something else important that gets broken, which is the LaTeX environments, or document elements, if you prefer. So a table might get broken over several pages, and a paragraph might get broken, and a piece of highlighted text might get broken. Now, the highlighted text, if it's in italic, the italic characteristic carries through across the break. But if it's colored italic, all manner of problems arise because the color information is rather hard to carry across the break. And I mentioned that technical problem, which is fairly easy to see. Let's make it a bit more detailed, which is the color information is in fact a LaTeX environment where you begin a red color for the foreground color, and then you end it, and the beginning and the end appear on different pages. And so the PostScript commands that turn the color on and turn it off are actually separated from one page to another. And PostScript in PDF renders each, particularly PDF, renders each page by itself. And so the one page is missing its end red, and the other page is missing its begin red. So it's a bit like sort of chopping a worm in half. And when you chop the worm in half, in this setting, what you want is you want the bit that's got one head to sprout a tail, and the bit that's got no tail to sprout a head. So at the chopping, you want to insert a tail and a head. And you have precisely that problem when you're creating tagged PDF. That's precisely the problem you have when you're creating tagged PDF, is that the PDF has to tell the screen reader that you read this bit, and then when you get to the end of that, you go to the next page, or you go to the next column, or you go to the bottom of the page and have a look at what's there. So that's what's called tagged PDF, and it's sometimes also called accessible PDF. Accessible means that somebody can actually access it, whereas tagged is a technical statement. So there are at least 2 ways of producing, at least 3 ways of producing tagged PDF using from TeX. One of them is to produce PDF in the normal way and then use special tools to add the tagging. And as you can imagine, it's either automated, cheap and poor, or done by humans, expensive and of better quality. And it's something that has to be done every time the document is typeset again. So you're doing that cardinal sin of editing a generated file. So that's one route. Another route is what I call rich DVI files. And for our purposes, a DVI file has sufficient information to produce PostScript output and PDF output, but it doesn't understand the structure of the document. Now, you have 2 trees that disagree with each other. You've got the PDF tree, which is, what's the word? All the bits be broken. Remember I said everything gets broken. So the PDF tree is an organized, is all the fragments we've broken it into in a structure. And you might think of it as rather like a piece of music, where the structure of the music doesn't necessarily represent the structure of the printed music. It might or it might not. I don't know. I'll stop that because I'm not an expert. I'm far from being an expert. So the problem is to get the tagging information into the PDF And essentially, in a sense, the problem is taking care of all the breaking that's taking place. Whenever a break occurs as a result of the typesetting process, a link has to be produced in the PDF, and an end and a begin might also have to be added. So if a paragraph extends over a page, then you have to close that paragraph element in the PDF, in the tagged PDF, and open it in open a new paragraph element in the next page, and tell the PDF to produce a link.